Welcome to this episode of Threading Thoughts. Space junk refers to fragments left behind in space by humans. Most space junk is debris from rocket launching materials as well as disused satellites. The amount of debris in orbit has increased dramatically and can likely lead to a scenario where collisions between orbiting pieces of debris create more debris and the amount of debris grows exponentially, potentially rendering near Earth orbit unusable. That's not all. Both for terrestrial telecommunications as well as for ongoing missions, this poses a serious threat, a threat that we can't see. Co-founder and CEO Agnes graduated with a dual Masters of Science in Mechanical Engineering and Fluid Dynamics. She received a doctorate in 2022 in computational physics for aerodynamics. She is also a scientific collaborator in the field of renewable energy. Co-founder and CTO Thibault graduated with a dual Masters of Science in Aerospace Engineering from ISAE, Supero, and the University of Michigan. Received his doctorate in 2016 in numerical fluid dynamics and postdoctoral fellow in aeroacoustic and digital turbomachinery. He is the lead research software engineer in computational aerodynamics with 2 years experience as a core software engineer in an AI company. He published an article on the application of the immerse boundary method to hypersonic flow, which became a key technology at the core of their startup. Welcome to this episode of Threading Thoughts. I'm incredibly excited to have Thibault and Agnes with us, talking about junk, but space junk. So how can it not get any more interesting? Thank you so much, both of you, for taking time off and speaking to me today.
Thank you very much for welcoming us. We are also, I think, very excited to share some ideas around this.
Yes, thanks. Thank you very much.
Lovely. So let me just jump straight off into some of the questions that I have in my mind. So first of all, of course, we were talking about junk, but space junk, right? And there's this first of all, to wrap our head around something called a space junk. Not many of us might have an understanding of it. The second is, why do we even worry about it? It's not like it's filling Earth, right? It's not junk in front of us. And why should we think that this is even important to worry about? And of course, post that I will talk about, the US space network feeling the need to catalog space debris. What is there to catalog about any debris? So if you could just throw a little bit of light on that, that'll be great.
Yes, so first of all, space junks. Space junks are fragments of man-made objects that are left in space. Traditionally, space operations are so mission-focused, so what goes up in space, they do not always come back, or they are not disposed of properly.
Okay.
Space junks can be bits of pieces of inactive satellites, rockets that carry them into space, debris from missiles, or even stuff left behind by astronauts. They can be as large as a school bus or as small as a sack of paint.
Yeah,
yep.
Happens.
And the European Space Agency recorded around 140 million pieces of junk that are orbiting our planet. So these junks are as small as 1 millimeter in size or greater than 10 centimeters.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So why should we worry about it? Space junks can be dangerous because anything orbiting Earth is moving fast. A debris in space travels at roughly 10 kilometers per second. That is 300 times faster than the maximum speed on most US highways. So when an object the size of a fleck of paint comes into collision with a satellite in operation, for instance, it could destroy a spacecraft's ability to power up or to reach a certain altitude upon impact. And if a spacecraft comes into collision with a 10 centimeter object, which is the size of a large bagel, it could break an average satellite into pieces upon impact, creating more debris and a chain reaction that we call the Kessler syndrome.
Wow.
So furthermore, a satellite company might lose a spacecraft, and the cost of such an event could amount up to $600 million for extra cost.
For one lost spacecraft,
for one
if it happens, then it would be amazing.
That is very costly. That's a costly loss.
And
Yeah.
that is a lot of money. And for us on Earth, why should we worry? Because today, so
Yeah.
many satellites are used for telecommunications,
Mm.
to deliver internet, or even to monitor agriculture, to monitor the weather on Earth.
True.
And so many of these
Yeah.
everyday technologies that are made up, that are making up this modern life, comes from the space sector.
Got it.
So if space gets too crowded and congested, we could lose access temporarily or semi-permanently to all these amenities and gestures of modern life
Yeah.
that I have to agree that we are growing
Yeah.
to depend on all these
Completely.
technologies.
Even
True.
Zoom.
Yes. So it is also possible for space junk to unexpectedly land on Earth if post-mission disposal is not planned correctly. So this, of course, pose risk to ground infrastructures and people if a
And
space junk.
so I'm just going to quickly butt in. Has this happened before? Like it's actually landed on Earth, or there was an issue with that? Has it actually
Yeah.
happened?
It happened. It happened a couple times that pieces. I mean, it's usually large pieces that then survive their trip back. They land but there's never been any casualties or anything like that.
Okay,
It's
good.
a rare event. Usually it lands in a forest somewhere or in the ocean somewhere. So it's more of a, oh, I'm taking a picture with a big piece of space rocket that I found in my backyard kind of thing, than an actual risk. But I mean, it's just a matter of statistics at some point.
Exactly,
A lot.
exactly. Matter of statistics. Beautifully said, because it's a matter of time that it actually lands, given that we are such a populous Earth. So it's
Yeah.
just a matter of time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, if nothing is done, but there is stuff that are being done. We can talk about that later.
absolutely.
If you want to talk about why do we catalog this and why does the US feel the need to catalog it,
Yes,
I think I will explain why the US, but not only the US. Actually, most countries feel the need to catalog the space objects for almost the same reasons. So one of the main reason why they need to catalog this is to protect the space assets. As Agnes just mentioned, of course, everything nowadays depends on satellites, telecommunication, TV, GPS. Even the military depends on telecommunications that are protected by satellites. So really protecting the space assets is really paramount there. So you need to know what's up there to make sure that there will be no collision or no interruption of
right.
service because of damage or something like this. So really a good catalog helps preventing collisions, preventing damages to the battery, to the solar panel, or to the cameras. And really that is something also that we are using at Ray CAE, our company. We make use of those catalogs to actually help in predicting collisions. So we send collision warnings very early. And we can also use those catalogs to analyze the maneuvers, the possible maneuvers. If you have to avoid something, then you might want to steer a bit off out of it, and to make sure that that maneuver is not going to cause many problems down the line if you're not going to hit something else because you avoided
Right.
the first one. And I think the last point about catalogs is it also helps in an history point of view, where you know how it's growing, so you can actually monitor the situation and make sure that in the long run it's sustainable. I mean, the space access is still there and you can still access your space. So really you can use that catalog to say, hey, there is something going on, it's growing, you have to do something. And it also helps in a way that in the statistics way you can really develop collision avoidance strategies, make new space traffic management kind of things. So many countries need that, of course.
No, that seems like that's really important. I was wondering, when you say a catalog, how does it? Is it like a catalog that we see in maybe in art and stuff like that? I mean, it just tells you what it is. What are the details that you catalog actually?
So basically, it's really a huge listing.
Okay.
So you've got the idea of the satellite. So each satellite that is launched, whatever satellite is launched has an ID that is unique. So you got the idea of the satellite, and then you got basically what we call orbital parameters. So it's the way to describe the orbit of the satellite. So
Right.
you know its altitude, you know how it is inclined, all those details. And it's just a huge list, and you get ID, date of last data point or check, and then all those parameters that tell you where it is, basically.
Position.
No, because I was thinking it is important, right? Because things move in space. So just because you say that there's a debris, you should also know its trajectory, perhaps.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And also be able to.
Yeah, that's what we call the orbit. The trajectory of the debris is the orbit, and the catalog is updated usually once or 3 times per day.
Wow.
Thanks to observatories and
Radar.
radars on the ground. So this way, you make sure that the trajectory, you have it in not real time, but you know
Correct.
enough.
I mean, you sort of, it's not just predictive. You actually know at different points of time where it is, right?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
That's lovely. And Agnes,
Yeah.
I'm going to come back to you. You were talking about congestion, right?
Mhm.
So, congestion on Earth is always an issue, and it's a growing complication. But what do you mean by space congestion? And this infinite amount of space, isn't there? So where is our concern with congestion, and how does it affect us actually?
Very good question.
Yeah.
Well, it's becoming a huge concern, space congestion, because more and more countries, private entities are launching satellites, spacecraft into orbit. So this congestion can impact space activities such as launch delays. So meaning there is a limited availability of launch windows and orbital slots due to congestion. That is one example. And this means it's leading to space traffic management issues, where space agencies and operators must coordinate maneuvers, and this requires advanced planning.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think maybe one point to really understand why it's congested. Yeah, space is infinite, but the space around the Earth that we can use to basically put satellites is limited. We don't put them further than a given
Right.
altitude. So then it becomes a sphere around the Earth where you can put satellites only there, and that's why it's getting crowded.
And I'm going to ask you a shockingly, perhaps dumb question. Can't we just knock these space debris out into space where we really don't need them? Is there some sort of way to push them out so that, this bandwidth of space that we need is still sort of conserved?
That is actually happening. So what happens now for low Earth orbit satellites, at the end of life, the guidelines today is they have to re-enter the atmosphere of Earth. But from what you mentioned, it exists. It's called a graveyard orbit.
Yeah.
So meaning for satellites that are in higher orbit,
it's called geostationary.
What distance is it?
Very long. It's 36,000 kilometers in altitude.
And it's exactly what you mentioned. So at their end of life, they have to steer the satellite into this graveyard orbit, so they do not use up space.
The space, right? Okay. Now I feel better that I asked that question. Apparently, there is a lot of thought going into it. So that's good to know. And the other thing that I wanted to ask is, of course, this I think is a sort of a global, consolidated effort, because this is not one country doing something. There are multiple countries that are coming together to help with this. So what are some that you know of or that you think should come into play? Mitigating space debris through, policies that are international policies, perhaps, that are set.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question, because there's a lot of thoughts being put in drafting new regulations nowadays. I mean, really recently, in the past month. The thing with space regulation is that it's per country, almost. There is no international law, so yet. So everybody is a bit, enforcing the regulations they want.
Right.
So for now there is no international book or guideline that really everybody is adhering to. But for instance, Europe is really trying to enforce something at the European level. So it's not per country; it's more for everybody in the Europe.
In the
Two
Europe,
days
yeah.
in Europe, sorry, for 2 days ago, for instance, there was this zero debris charter that was released.
Okay.
So the zero debris charter is a set of guidelines or recommendations that ESA is trying, so the European Space Agency is trying to push forward so that by 2030, no country that is part of the European Space Agency partnership basically is going to generate debris. So by 2030, the aim is really to stop generating debris in orbit. So this
Ah,
this goes through not colliding with anything, and this also goes by properly disposing of your spacecraft at the end of its life.
right.
So this is one of those guidelines that is above countries, and of
Uh-huh.
course, ESA is trying to push it worldwide. I mean,
Globally,
we really
yeah.
want to push it globally.
Right.
The US also are doing something. There's a very new guideline. It's stronger than a guideline. It's almost a law, halfway there. That the FAA, so Federal Agency of Aviation, just released
The bill.
a bill a week ago or something,
Uh-huh.
to really also make sure that there are no debris left. So no debris in orbit and no debris when you come back down. So really, it's starting to get there. We're starting to really see that there's a lot of countries that think about, oh yeah, maybe there's something to be done there. No global effort, but I mean, it's something that is really growing. And
Right.
we are at RCAE, we signed also this European charter. So we are really also trying to address this problem in a global manner. We're not only talking to European actors. We really want to spread this awareness among
Right.
Global.
And
global actors.
it's interesting to note that only now people are trying to come together, perhaps because they're understanding the seriousness a little more, and they see a common problem. But this sort of leads me to another point. I mean, it's basically out of interest that I might be asking you this, but
Yeah.
to a larger population out there, right? So is there really an urgency? Honestly speaking, is there really an urgency, or what is the time frame that we're looking at in the distance? And if there is an urgency, how can this urgency of issue be brought to the focus of, the common citizenry, right?
Mm.
Because we are not directly aware or affected by it as yet, or we
Yeah,
think we
exactly.
are not aware and affected by it. That's a better way to put it.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
why is there really an urgency? I mean, don't we have enough
I-
space around and time?
yeah, there's a lot of space. No, I mean, there is an urgency, I think, more for the space industry in the sense that we really see, I mean, to come back to what Agnes started with, it's like, it's really growing, right? The space industry is growing, it's super fast. Nowadays, there's about 8,000 satellites up there, functioning satellites. And some projections are saying that there will be maybe 63,000 satellites by 2030.
2030.
So it's growing, right? So the concern is not that there's no more space. The concern is that if we continue at that rate, then it might become a little bit unbearable, and it might lead to really big problems. So the urgency is to actually do something now, so we don't have a big problem later.
Later on, right? Yeah.
And yeah, I agree with you. It's not a very well known fact. I mean, every time there is a workshop or a conference at the space agency, usually they do some kind of press release after that, and some people are aware and read those. But if you ask in the street whether or not our Earth orbit is crowded, most people are going to say they don't know. So we can do the same way as the space industry has always done. It's really, for the space industry in general, scientific outreach was always the best channel to communicate what is going on and the progress that has been made, right? And we think that for space debris is the same thing. So you can mention it in talks that are followed by media. You can also enter more podcasts, for instance. That's a
Right.
great way to reach more people that are not space experts. can also have expositions in observatory and museums. There's a lot to be done there. And on our end, what we tend to do in scientific outreach for our Ray CAE company, we attend conferences that are not necessarily expert talks. So we go to observatories, we talk to astronomers, we talk to people that are just there because they're curious. And one maybe new approach for us is also that we have a smartphone app where you can see in real time what's going on there. It's a free smartphone app. Just to see in real time what's going on out there.
Yeah.
You can a bit interact with your with the satellites and debris that is just out there.
To see where is it going, its orbit, and so on.
It's a bit of awareness,
That is funky, literally. I mean, that is so cool. Because sometimes numbers and names might not,
True.
everybody's cup of tea, but visually presenting something actually means a lot to them, and the connect sometimes is way better. So that's a lovely idea as well. But thank you so much. I mean, I'm sure there's just like a ton more to talk about, but it just so happened that this was just so interesting because it's sort of a sort of introductory, right? To really see what's happening, because I'm sure there is something happening in India. It's a very active space, and sustainability and taking care of the environment are topmost on a lot of people's minds here, policymakers as well as private individuals. So it's not that this might be new, but it always helps to have a stronger voice, a larger focus as well. So, and this is amazing. And you really have broken it down for people who really have no clue what it is. So that helps quite a bit. Literally like DOS for dummies, right? So it makes it easy to actually understand, okay, this is what's happening and this is even there. But this is absolutely lovely. And thank you for taking the time off, Thibault and Agnes. It's really been lovely of you to share your thoughts and your knowledge with us. So
we were happy to do so.
We were happy to do so, and I hope we brought in
a bit more light on this topic.
Absolutely. And it just takes a spark of one interest for people to start figuring out, let me read up a little more, let me learn a little more. That's all it is. And then that's the way knowledge spreads. So thank you for sharing your knowledge though. And lovely to have you with us.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.